There we just read in Proverbs chapter 27, we read verses 1 through 6. We talked about that opening verse just a few weeks ago. We mentioned it in passing that none of us know how many more days we have. That's what the Bible tells us to teach us to number our days, and we cannot boast for tomorrow because we don't know what today will bring. And so that's the way the chapter starts off, and then it talks about how we should not be praising or bragging on ourselves or exalting ourselves, but we ought to let someone else do that and praise us. And then we talked about wrath and the fool's wrath, and then how anger is outrageous, and who can stand before envy. And open rebuke is better than secret love, and that is true. If someone will not tell you the truth, then they have a shallow love, and they really are not loving you the way they should. Because if you love someone, you're going to tell them the truth. Now I know there's some people, sometimes you have friends that will be honest with you and tell you the truth, and then there's other times you have friends that that maybe are not as close to you that won't tell you the truth. But it's always good to have friends who are willing to tell you the truth, and even if it is a critique or rebuke, it's good to have that secret love, and having somebody sound your praises and then behind your backs critique you and criticize. And verse 6 is really the text verse for this morning. It says, "Faithful are the wounds of a friend, but the kisses of an enemy are deceitful." Faithful are the wounds of a friend, but the kisses of an enemy are deceitful. I thank God for good friends. I thank God for my wife. She's probably my best friend, and she lets me have it all the time. She's not afraid to rebuke me and to tell me when I'm slacking. But I thank God for friends, and if you have a friend, a true friend that is honest with you and is close enough with you to be honest with you, then boy, count that a treasure for sure. But this morning, we're talking about the kiss of an enemy. The kiss of an enemy. In Matthew chapter 27, I want you to turn there. We'll be spending much of the rest of the message right here in Matthew. As I want to illustrate to you, through Jesus Christ, how to deal with the kiss of an enemy. In Matthew chapter 27, and let's begin with verse 46. We'll start reading and stop and go, stop and go like that for a little while. But Matthew chapter 20, I'm sorry, I got the wrong chapter, chapter 26. Matthew 26. Matthew 26 and verse 46. Now, before we begin reading, Jesus was just in the Garden of Gethsemane. He had brought three of his closest friends with him, Peter, James, and John. And while he was out there praying, they fell asleep. And as he was praying, and so that's the background or the foundation of the story. So we know it's towards the end of Jesus' his life. His ministry's just about done now, and he's about ready to go to the cross. And so we pick up in verse 46. It says, "Rise, let us be going. Behold, he is at hand that doth betray me." And while he yet spake, lo, Judas, one of the 12, came, and with him a great multitude, with swords and staves, from the chief priests and elders of the people. So, this morning I want to help you and share some thoughts from Jesus Christ and how he dealt with the kiss of an enemy, and how he was able to take the deceitful kiss from an enemy and turn it into a faithful wound of a friend. And this morning, you're going to have, at a time in your life, a friend wound you. Someone that you've gone with for 3.5 years, someone that you've been with day after day after day, that you've invested in and spent time with and just have a fellowship with, and you're going to be wounded by a friend. It could be a brother or sister in Christ. It could be a family member. It could be someone at church. It could be your pastor. You know, I'll be honest, I know I've wounded people by, not necessarily me, but by preaching the Word of God and by preaching the truth, and someone was convicted and wounded by the Scripture, the sword of the Spirit, and by what was said. And oftentimes the messenger gets blamed and gets the brunt of the deal. But I'll be guilty of that at some point, or maybe I'll forget to say hello to you, or mistakenly not shake your hand and wish you a good week, or something like that, or do something and forget to compliment your baked ziti or your sausage and peppers, or just in some form or some fashion unintentionally wound you. And someone here at church will as well. I mean, church is made up of people. And people at best are still people. The Bible says, man at his best day is still vain, altogether vanity. And so we will have problems, and we will have times where we feel someone has said something or done something that has offended us. And we need to learn how to take a wound or an offense that is from someone who has betrayed us and turn it into a faithful wound of a friend. Now, if a friend does wound you, you ought to count it as a blessing, as faithful, that God has allowed that. God is maybe trying to speak through that friend to you, possibly. But I'm talking about maybe necessarily someone who has been really adversarial towards you. Someone that you think of, well, they do not like me. And I'm not their enemy, but they consider me an enemy. And I don't think any of us should really have enemies, because we should pray for our enemies. And once you start praying for your enemies, then they no longer become your enemy; they become a burden you have. But in that sense, we'll have people that will oppose us and be adversarial against us. And in this story, it was Judas. Judas was the enemy, but he was also a faithful follower of Jesus Christ. Jesus spent 3.5 years with him, and so this deceitful kiss that came from Judas, Jesus Christ was able to take it and turn it into a faithful wound of a friend. And I want to share this with you this morning, and hopefully it'll help you to do the same. And so we just read, he says, rise up and let us be going to the 3, Peter, James, and John. He says, and while he yet spake, Judas, one of the 12, came, and with him a great multitude of swords and staves from the chief priests and the elders of the people. And then verse 48, he says, now he that betrayeth him gave them a sign, saying, whomsoever I shall kiss, that same is he, hold him fast. So Judas made a deal with the chief priests and the leaders, and he said, listen, I'll show you where Jesus is. I know where he is. He's in the garden praying right now, and I'll lead you to him. And just in case you are misguided by the darkness of the sky, and just because of the distance that you may be at first, I don't want you to mistake who Jesus is. And some of them maybe have never seen Jesus, some of those chief priests. So he said, I'm going to give you a sign. I'm going to walk up to Jesus, and I'm going to kiss him on the cheek. And when I kiss that man on the cheek, you'll know it's Jesus. And so he said, that's going to be the sign to you. That's going to be your signal to take him, to grab him, and to take hold of him. Now Judas had made this agreement for 30 pieces of silver. And so Jesus is here in the garden, and now Judas comes with the enemies of Christ, the chief priests, those that hated Christ, those that wanted him dead, those who wanted to kill Jesus, are now being accompanied to Jesus by Judas. And Judas came, first of all, determined. In verse 47, it says, Judas, one of the 12, came, and with him a great multitude. Judas came with a great multitude. Judas didn't come with just one or two chief priests. He said, we're going to need a multitude. We're going to need a crowd of people. And I think you all should come, and you should all be there when you take him captive. And Judas, of course, knew the abilities and powers of Jesus Christ. But he came determined with a great multitude. So here's Judas leading the way of a group of people. And not just any group of people, a group of many people. And not only that, they have swords and staves. Pay attention, listen carefully, okay? I need you to follow me this morning. So they come, this great group of people, multitude, with swords and with staves, ready to take Jesus by force, if need be, and to fight. And even crucify or kill him there if he resisted. So Judas came determined. But not only did he come determined, he came devilishly. He came devilishly. In John chapter 13, you don't have to turn there if you don't rather not. Keep your place there in Matthew. I can just read it to you. In John chapter 13, verse 2, it says, "And supper being ended, the devil having now put into the heart of Judas Iscariot, Simon's son, to betray him." So it was the devil who had put in the heart of Judas to do this. So not only did Judas come determined, hey, we need to have an army of people, we need to have our swords and our staves, we need to be prepared and have some ammunition, we need to go there by force and take him. He was determined. But he also came devilishly. It was the devil that was working through Judas. The devil put it in Judas's heart to betray Jesus Christ. So here's this man who has been following Jesus for 3.5 years. Think about this. He's been following Jesus for 3.5 years. Think about all the times they fished. Think about all the times they ate. Think about all the times they ministered to people and prayed together. Here for 3.5 years, Judas has been following Jesus. And now, it's like that. He's going to do something as evil as it can get by going after an innocent, a sinless man. Someone that wasn't guilty of nothing. I mean, he wasn't even guilty of looking at someone in the wrong way. Jesus was perfect. There was no sin in him. Judas knew Jesus' godliness, his innocence. He knew who Jesus was. And yet, the devil put it in Judas' heart to treat him unfairly, to do harm to him, to betray him. So Judas came determined, and he came devilishly. The devil was working through Judas, no doubt. And then also, 3, he came deceitfully. He came deceitfully. He came determined, he came devilishly, and he came deceitfully. In verse 49 of Matthew 26, notice this a contradiction here. In verse 49, and forthwith he, being Judas, came to Jesus and said, "Hail, Master," and kissed him. You see the deceit in Judas right here? He's come and saying, "Hail, Master." In other words, he's greeting him as the Master. He's greeting him in a proper, respectful way. And then he's going to kiss him on the cheek, which was a sign of affection. It was a sign of a proper way to greet someone in those days. We'll stick the handshaking here at our church. We're not going to go around kissing one another on the cheek, okay? We'll stick the handshaking. But in those days, a kiss on the cheek was a sign of affection and goodwill and just a way to greet one another. So Jesus says, "Hail, Master," gives him a cheek on the kiss. It looks, wow. It looks really good on the outside, from the outside. But what's in Judas' heart? The devil put it in his heart to betray him. So he came deceitfully. He didn't come running in with a sword and a stave and try to go after Jesus and stab him. He let the other people do that. He let the guards do that. And he said, "I'm going to go in and I'm going to be very sly and subtle about it." Why? Because that's the way the devil is. And the devil had put it in the heart of Judas to do this. And the devil works in sly, subtle ways. And so Judas came in, act like nothing was wrong, acted like he acted probably every other time he greeted Jesus. Hail, Master. It's like shaking somebody and having a big smile on your face and saying, boy, brother, I'm so glad to see you, but yet you really in your heart have animosity or envy or unforgiveness. That's deceitful as well. So we need to just make sure that we are careful that we don't fall into the same trap that Judas did. Because Judas was human and we're human, and we could end up being deceitful in our practice or putting on an act, and that's called hypocrisy. The Pharisees were great at that. They were great at acting a certain way on the outside, but inward their hearts were as wicked and as devilish as could be. So we need to make sure that we have a genuine and sincere heart. And when we really tell a brother, hey, I'm praying for you, that we do pray for them. I know of a pastor who texted me this morning, and he gave me an encouraging verse and said that you're praying for me. And that was so encouraging to me, because I know this man, and I know if he says he's praying for me, then he is praying for me. And so what an encouragement. And it's so honorable, it's so refreshing to have a friend who is real and genuine. Judas was not that. He was not genuine. He was not real. He was not sincere. He came deceitfully saying, I'm going to kiss him on the cheek and I'm going to hail him as my master, and then you guys will know that's the one. Go and take him. So this morning we're talking about the kiss of an enemy. Judas and his kiss on the cheek of Jesus Christ was the kiss of an enemy. But how did Jesus take it? I'm going to show you in just a moment. Jesus took it as the wound of a friend. As the wound of a friend. And I'll show you how we can do this in our own personal lives. Let's look back at verse 49, and then we'll get into verse 50. And forthwith he came to Jesus and said, Hail, Master, and kissed him. And Jesus said unto him, Friend, wherefore art thou come? Then came they and laid hands on Jesus and took him. What an amazing verse. I marvel every time I read that, verse 50. Jesus knew, because according to verse 46, he told his 3 disciples that they were praying with, Behold, the hour is now come. He that doth betray me is at hand. Judas knew what was coming. Or Jesus knew what was coming. Jesus knew Judas was coming to betray him. And then Judas comes and says, Hail, Master, gives him a kiss on the cheek. Jesus didn't say, Oh, you deceitful, devilish rascal, I would call fire down from heaven right now and just kill you and abolish you. No, what did Jesus do? He said, Wherefore art thou come, friend? What an amazing statement from Jesus Christ. He didn't say that because he was confused and deceived in thinking that Judas was actually greeting him with love and admiration and proper respect. He knew what was going on here. And yet he still called Judas his friend. So I want to give you 3 things this morning. First of all, Jesus was able to take this kiss of an enemy and turn it into a faithful wound from a friend. And let's look at how Christ handled it. First of all, he shows the faithfulness of a friend. We just read, Turn your eyes upon Jesus. Look full into his wonderful face. There's not a friend like the lowly Jesus. No, not one. What a friend we have in Jesus. All our griefs to bear. Like that Disney song, You've got a friend in me. You've got I think that was Toy Story. But Jesus certainly was a friend to everyone. And Jesus was a faithful friend. The faithfulness of a friend. This is so important. Verse 50, Jesus said unto them, Friend, wherefore art thou come? This morning, how can you turn the wounds and the offenses of people into a faithful wound? It starts off with you deciding to be a friend. and to be a faithful friend at that. Jesus made it very clear through the Sermon on the Mount and through his earthly ministry, he did not have enemies. Now he did. We know he did have enemies. But in his heart, in his mind, he says, I'm not going there. I'm not going to choose to retaliate, and I'm not going to choose to lower my standard of living to their standard of living. And they may consider me their enemy, but I'm not going there, and I'm not going to, they will never become my enemy. That takes maturity. That takes Christ-likeness. But if we can try to get our handle on that and to viewing those people around us, not as enemies, as friends. I'm hopeful you view your pastor as your friend. And a faithful friend at that will speak the truth in love and step on your toes every once in a while. I hope you have some other Christian friends that you enjoy their company and their fellowship and even their opinions and their advice. But if our friends are only those people that treat us well, then we have not reached the degree of excellence that Jesus Christ is at. You see, Jesus said to Judas, "You're my friend." You know what that means? That means Jesus determined who and who was his friend by his own nature, his own volition, his own accord. What do? So often we'll choose our friends by what they do for us. Well, if they keep in contact with me, if they wish me happy birthday, or if they stay close by, then they'll remain my friend. And if they're good to me, they'll remain my friend. Jesus says, listen, Judas is not my friend based on anything he does. He's my friend because I've decided he's my friend. That is a lost art today. And it's something that will change our lives when we view people as not our enemies, not our adversaries, but I'm going to be their friend. They may hate my guts, but I'm not lowering myself to that standard. I am going to love them and pray for them, and I am going to treat them as if I would treat my best friend. And isn't that what the golden rule is all about? Do unto others as you would have done unto you, and to treat someone the way you would want to be treated. That's how you make people your friends. Who in your life has been adversarial with you or been enmity with you? Challenge them. Make that person your friend. They don't have to consider you their friend, but you say, that person's going to be my friend. I'm going to pray for them. I'm going to try to encourage them. A friend is one of the great gifts, and a faithful friend. And I'm glad Jesus is our faithful friend. When earthly friends do forsake us and leave us, flee from us, and betray us, we know we have a friend in Jesus who will never do that. He's faithful. I wonder if we could be faithful to some people. God brought certain people to my mind as I was preparing to this. Some of them, there were people that I loved and knew very well, but who have since, for whatever reason, turned their back and gone off astray. And now, because they're at enmity with God, they're at enmity with me as a friend. And certain people came to my mind, and I thought to myself, I'm a really lousy friend. I'm really a lousy friend. Because I'm letting their lack of showing themselves, showing me that I am their friend has affected me. That we ought to be able to say, listen, they may not be a faithful friend to me, but when I decided to be that person's friend, I meant it, and I meant it to the end. That's what Jesus did. He said, hey, Judas is my friend. He's betraying me. The devil's put this in his heart. But yet, I'm not going to stoop to having anger in my heart and unforgiveness. And I'm not going to retaliate against Judas. I'm still going to let him know that he's still my friend. Boy, that's powerful. I wonder what Judas thought. I wonder if he was a little bit shocked when he kissed Jesus on the cheek and Jesus said, where'd you come from? Where have you been, friend? I wonder if there was a sharp sword piercing the heart of Judas as he was convicted. I'm betraying deceitfully this innocent man, and yet he still has the compassion, integrity, and love to still call me his friend. If we would learn to be faithful, to be a faithful friend, not because what people do for us, not because how people treat us, then when a kiss of betrayal does come our way, we'll be able to handle it and deal with it. So that's the first thing, faithfulness of a friend. The second thing is we see Jesus was able to handle this kiss of the enemy because he was a faithful friend. But the second reason he was able to handle this kiss of an enemy because he understood the fulfillment of the Father. Look at verse 53, if you will, with me. Verse 53 says, thinkest thou that I cannot now pray to my Father, and he shall presently give me more than 12 legions of angels? But how then shall the Scriptures be fulfilled that thus it must be? Jesus said, listen, I could call down 12 legions of angels. I could call down the angels. I could call down fire from heaven. I could ask my Father to step in and intervene and destroy all of you guys. But then the Scriptures would not be fulfilled. And his Father's will would not be fulfilled. So how do you deal with the kisses from an enemy? How do you deal with that kiss from that friend that has betrayed you and still maintain that wound, that faithful wound? And it be something that is used for the glory of God and something that is used to further your Christianity rather than to cause you to become angry, ungrateful, unforgiving, and bitter. Well, you do it by realizing God's fulfilling plan, the fulfillment of the Father. Listen, God is sovereign and in control. That doesn't mean He dictates us as puppets and causes us to do everything. It means that He has full power and authority and control over the things that comes into our lives. When you sin, it's not because God caused you to sin. But God has full power and full control over your life to allow you a way of escape. We're not tempted above that which we're able, but God will offer a way of escape. God will give you a way out of your desire to sin. When a trouble comes your way, it only comes through the hand of God. God is providentially working in your life. There's a will that's being performed in your life. Jesus knew that very clearly, and He knew that he could have called the angels to rescue Him, to save Him, but He was more concerned about God accomplishing His will. If somebody wounds you, I don't believe at all that God should be blamed for causing that person to wound you, but I do believe God allowed it to happen. God allowed that person to abuse you. Was God the one initiating that person to abuse you? Not at all. But could God have prevented it? Yes. But He allowed it. That's tough to handle. That's tough to swallow. This heartache and trial and trouble that's come into my life, I don't understand why I have to deal with this and why I have to face this. Well, God allowed it to come into your life. And so when we think of the wounds that come or the kisses of an enemy, we need to realize that behind the scenes, God has a purpose in it. There was a purpose in why Judas kissed Jesus. And why Jesus was betrayed. So the Father's will could be accomplished. I don't know why some of my dear friends have turned aside and decided that they're not going to be my friend anymore. But I know this. I know that God has something in that relationship, that broken relationship, that He wants me to learn from, or He wants me to grow from. Amen. So the faithfulness of a friend, the fulfillment of the Father, that God's at work. And often if we resist the events and the circumstances that come our way, we're resisting God trying to teach us something, or show us something. So then lastly, the fearfulness of His followers, or better yet, the forsaking of His followers. Verse 56 says, "But all this was done that the scriptures of the prophets might be fulfilled. Then all the disciples forsook Him and fled." They forsook Him and fled. You see, they were misconstrued. They thought this was going to be the rise of the great King of the Jews. They thought Jesus was coming in to be King of the Kings and Lord of Lords, to set up His earthly kingdom. And then when they saw their Savior, their leader, taken by force, they're like, what's going on? This doesn't make sense. This is not what we had impressed in our minds that was going to bring in His kingdom, Him being captured. Because they didn't quite understand the scriptures at this point. The Bible's clear on that in the Gospel of Mark, I believe it is. So they forsook Jesus. They forsook Jesus. How are you going to deal with it when people forsake you? The disciples did it out of fear. There are many reasons why people forsake and betray or turn away from you as a friend or as a family member or as a Christian. How are you going to respond to that forsaking of friends? We don't got time to read the entire chapter, but look at the way Jesus responded. Jesus desired to retain them. In John chapter 21, they had been depressed, and Peter and some of the disciples went out fishing. They wanted to get him because they thought it was all over. It's done. Our Savior, the one that we put all of our time and effort into, He's gone now. They became discouraged. Said, well, let's go back to fishing. That's what we do good. And it was Jesus who went after them and appeared on the seashore that day while they're out there in the sea fishing. Jesus sought them out. He still desired to reach them. I think it's so key that when people forsake us, when people leave us, we need to seek reconciliation. Now, reconciliation is not always possible. I do understand that. And in some cases, it would be unwise to reconcile, depending on the circumstances of the wound and the offense that has taken place. But even if we can't physically reconcile, there ought to be a desire in the heart of every single one of us to have that relationship to that person restored. To be that person's friend again. Maybe you can't be as close as you once were, but to still be that person's faithful friend. Jesus responded well to the fleeing or the forsaking of his followers. He did so because he understood the fulfillment of the Father. And he was the true epitome of a faithless friend. This morning, know you have a faithful friend. You have a faithful friend. You have a friend in Jesus. Trust his sovereign plan in your life. Trust that the things that you're struggling with today, he has a purpose in why he's allowed them into your life, and he's going to use them if you're relying and leaning upon him to make you great, to make you a better Christian. And do not allow fear, unforgiveness, bitterness to cause you to forsake reconciliation. I don't know exactly how Judas felt. Someone once wrote this commentary on Judas. The scriptures do not clearly specify how deep he felt, except for that it came to the conclusion where he ended his life. But could it possibly be that this was Judas's testimony after this event? Could he have said the soldiers led the way, their torches lightened the garden, and casting weird shadows all about? And then I saw Jesus. He advanced to meet us unafraid. Peter and John were at his side. "Whom seek ye?" he asked. As I strode forward and placed a dreadful kiss upon his head. The chief priest spoke in a brazen voice, "We seek Jesus of Nazareth." "I am he," the master answered without a trace of fear. "Take him," the priest commanded. But Peter, my courageous friend, drew his sword as if to fight alone. Hope flamed in my soul for a moment, and then it was crushed. The old familiar spirit which I had known so long put an end to all my dreams. The master spoke again. "Put up thy sword into thy sheath, Simon Peter. Shall I not drink of the cup my Father hath given me?" Sick of heart, I turned and fled out into the night. I wandered through the darkness, fell upon my knees, and prayed until my soul began to sing. I heard his soft-spoken words anew. "This new commandment give I unto you, that ye love one another as I have loved you." He loved me. I know. When my heart was black with traitorous plans, he washed my feet. When he knew I would betray him, he bade me sit beside him at the feast. When he saw that I would go, he gave no sign to save himself, but let me go in peace. When I returned from praying in the night, I sought again the priests. I took them back their silver bribe and begged them to let him go. But they laughed and mocked me until I hurled their filthy coins upon the floor and fled again into the night. What can I do? How can I face the world again with my false betrayal upon my heavy heart? Thinkest thou that Jesus would forgive me? Yes, I'm sure he would. But oh my God, I can't forgive myself. And Judas, went out and hanged himself. The kiss of an enemy. Be a faithful friend and deal with the kisses of an enemy. And allow them to be the faithful wound of a friend. But by all means, don't be the one to give the kiss. Don't be the enemy who gives the kiss. Don't betray your friends. Don't hurt those who have given so much for you and have invested their lives and their time and energy into your life. Don't be a betrayer. The end result of that is unforgiveness and bitterness that you'll have trouble dealing with. Be a faithful friend. Be a faithful friend. And don't be someone who can be rightfully described as an enemy who gives deceitful kisses, as Judas did. The devil got a hold of Judas. He got into his heart. And the end result, Judas said, I can't forgive myself for what I've done. Jesus would have forgiven Judas. In fact, he already did. By the fact of calling Judas his friend, I believe that was a clear show that Jesus already in his heart had forgiven Judas for what he was going to do. But oftentimes it's hard to forgive ourselves when we betray someone or treat someone in a horrible way or are deceitful towards someone else. So let's be a faithful friend. Let's learn how to take those wounds and offenses from other people and to use them as tools to become more like Jesus Christ. Lord, I do thank you for Jesus Christ. Lord, he's been such a dear friend.